The new iPhone lineup was just unveiled a few days ago at Apple's awe-dropping event. For years, it seems like we've been getting kind of the same iteration of the same phone, but now it seems like their lineup philosophy has changed. Let's start with the base model iPhone 17. Each year, there's normally widespread rumors about the base model iPhone and the Pro iPhone. But this year, it seemed like most of the talk was about the Pro iPhone and this new thin iPhone Air. My point is, we didn't hear much about the base model iPhone 17 before it launched. So it was kind of assumed that it would be barely an upgrade from the iPhone 16, merely a spec bump. But it turns out that was kind of just wrong. Sure, at first glance, it shares the design with iPhone 16. Other than being a tiny bit bigger, it has the same contoured aluminum frame, the same textured back glass with the two cameras aligned vertically. But honestly, I loved how the iPhone 16 looked, so I don't really mind the design sticking around. I don't really think anybody does. But it does seem like this year, the gap between the base model iPhone and the Pro iPhone is finally starting to shrink. Let's start with the display, which has kind of always been the thing that's held the base model iPhone back. But now, it's incredible. First of all, the display is way brighter, jumping from 2000 nits to 3000 nits. And honestly, I don't think they made as big of a deal out of this as they could have, because now all the new iPhones with this display tie with Apple Watch Ultra as being the brightest display on any Apple product. Then they added Pro Motion, which means the display can refresh 120 times per second instead of just 60 like it was before. This means that animations look a lot smoother. But the display isn't always refreshing that fast. You see, displays with Pro Motion can dynamically lower the refresh rate all the way down to 1 Hertz. And this is useful for two reasons. First, it saves battery because your screen isn't constantly refreshing when it doesn't need to. And second, you can now get always on display, which until now has only been available for Pro models. Since 2020, the front of iPhones have had a coating called Ceramic Shield. It basically makes your screen harder to damage. At the new event, Apple unveiled Ceramic Shield 2, which gets added to all the new iPhone screens. They say it has 3 times better scratch resistance. They also talked about this new 7-layer anti-reflective coating. So it kind of seems like the nano texture material we've seen on like MacBooks and iPads, but more durable. Okay, of course, every year we get new Apple silicon, but there was more than just a chip in the iPhone 17. There's actually some new silicon designed by Apple that makes these new iPhones faster and more power efficient. Like this new Apple designed Bluetooth and Wi-Fi chip called N1, which makes the phone a lot more power efficient than if it were using some other modem. And of course, there's A19, the main processor on the new iPhone 17. It has a new display engine to make Pro Motion work and some other nerdy stuff that makes your phone not slow. Okay, so I've talked about all of this efficiency, right? N1 is a super efficient modem. A19 is a super efficient chip. Pro Motion is able to lower its refresh rate to be more efficient. So this all kind of leads to one thing, which is battery life. So all of these custom designed components means that the battery on iPhone 17 is gonna last even longer. According to the keynote, iPhone 17 is gonna last up to 30 hours. That's 8 hours more than the iPhone 16. Of course, this kind of depends on a few factors, so it's best to wait till people start to get their hands on these new iPhones to do actual battery tests. Just like every year, cameras took up a big portion of this iPhone 17 presentation, so here's what's new with the cameras. iPhone 16 had a 48 megapixel main camera, but only a 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens. But now on the iPhone 17, both of the cameras are 48 megapixels. So whenever you take those like 0.5 pictures of your friends to make them all look goofy and stretched out, you can see even more detail. Now, let's talk about iPhone Air, the thinnest iPhone ever made. I think the leaks pretty much had this one all figured out. It would have a 5.6 millimeter thin chassis, a single 48 megapixel fusion camera like on the iPhone 16e, all in this long Google Pixel style visor that runs across the top of the phone, which Apple is referring to as the camera plateau. But what nobody guessed was that the frame would be made of polished titanium. I mean, this is one of the most reflective iPhones they've ever made, and I kind of love it. According to Apple, the battery life of iPhone Air, surprisingly, is equivalent to the battery life of iPhone 16 Pro, which I've been using for a while now, and yes, it has great battery life. But obviously, putting great battery life in a phone that thin is a huge challenge. They talked about adaptive power mode, which is for any iPhone with iOS 26. But they also added a new cellular modem called C1X, which is an upgraded version of C1 from iPhone 16e. C1X is just like that, but twice as fast. But on the other hand, they're literally selling a MagSafe battery pack with the iPhone Air at launch. So something feels off, just weird. They showed off the thinness of iPhone Air in this really cool video, which I noticed has a different style than Apple has tended to use in the past. One thing I saw was a slight grain throughout the video, which I know probably means nothing, but it was an interesting style that seemed to reflect the beauty and design of the iPhone rather than just raw technical power. And that really does show throughout the entire design of iPhone Air. Yeah, it has worse battery life, only a single camera compared to the iPhone 17, but that's not the point. The point that Apple is trying to convey is that you can have magic in your pocket, something so thin it feels like you're just holding a display. So sure, it might not technically be the best iPhone, but it gives us a good idea of the future and what the best iPhone could become. After all of that, Apple talked about the new iPhone 17 Pro, which has a new design, some cool camera features, and some other stuff. But I'll talk about that as soon as I can get my hands on it to make an iPhone 17 Pro review. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like or maybe even subscribe. And what's funny is I actually sort of made my own Apple event to try to predict this one way back in March. It was super fun to make, so if that sounds interesting, you can click right here to watch it. All right, toodles.